To me, what makes that video so special, what makes the London Olympics so special, is that it was all about engagement. It was all about all of us. We were all so passionate about it. And I think what happened there was because we believed in it, because it was communicated to us in a way that made us care. And when I say us, I'm picking up on Seb Coe's words there, that when our time came, we did it right. So for me, the London Olympics is a triumph at an organisational level, firstly. What's also fantastic about it was that I got to be part of Team GB, and it was a fantastic success at a team level for 600 athletes from different sports, from 23 different sports coming together. And then I also want to share with you what it was like for me as an athlete to engage with it, and how I felt we came together as such a special team and such a different team in London in 2012 to the team that I'd experienced previously. Because I'd been to the Olympic Games 3 times before, in 92, 96, 2000. The team I left was wildly different to the one that I came back to. And the reason for that was because of how we worked together, how we were one team together. So just as a stat, does anyone know how many gold medals Team GB won in 1996? The answer's 1. We won 1 gold medal. This time, we won 29 gold medals, and we smashed it in the Paralympics as well. There's something there which was very, very different about this team and what it was like to be part of it. And what I want to share with you now in a brief amount of time is what it felt like to be in that team. So if I take you to the team that I was in 1992, I raced in this boat called the Coxed Pair. I was a rower within the Great Britain team. The way I worked was in a silo, in a stovepipe, as George said earlier. When I think about the way I approached it, I was actually in an 8. I was rowing in an 8. I had a leader who was the coach of my 8, and I remember he sat us down about a year before the Olympics, and he wasn't too good at this sort of thing. And he said to us, "Look guys, I want you to train really hard every day for a year. I think if you do that, you've got a pretty good chance of winning a silver." Now to me, that wasn't quite what I wanted to be hearing dynamically coming from the stage, coming to me. But he was trying to get us started. He was trying to get us to engage with where we were going. I came away from that conversation with my brother. And the two of us sat together and we took this on. And we said, we don't think we should win a silver. We think we can win a gold. We think the way to do that is to be a pair, to establish ourselves, to go out and do our own thing, do it our way. We went out and we raced in the first race of the year. We raced in a domestic competition. It was a trial over 5 kilometres. And in a 5-kilometre race, my brother and I came second, and we were 11 seconds behind the winners. The winners were 2 guys. One was called Steve Redgrave, one was called Matthew Pinson. These 2 turned out to be quite good rowers. But we came in from that session, and we sat with that coach, and he said to us, "Look, I can see so many opportunities for you to improve. I can see so many things you could do better, how you're not in time together, how you're not steering well together, how you're not moving well together." And he said, "Look, you're 11 seconds behind in a 5K race. That's 2.2 seconds in each kilometre. The real race is over 2 kilometres. So you're actually 4.4 seconds off these 2 guys. And you know what? They're the world record holders. They're the world champions. Let's think about how we go after 4.4 seconds. Let's do it in 6 months." So then we had a goal for ourselves. Then we had something that was very manageable that we could look at and we could build a story around how we were going to go and do that 4.4 seconds. We actually looked at the 6 months. We said we're rowers, we train twice a day. There's 30 days in a month. I train 60 times in a month. Why didn't I look to do 1 second per month? Why didn't I look to do a 60th of a second every time I go training? And that was the story that I told myself each time I went out to do the session. And then I've got to say, at the beginning of the year, the beginning of 1992, I got sent a calendar in the post. And in it, there was a lovely poster of Linford Christie and Sally Gunnell and all of our team. And there was a nice poster in there of Steve Redgrave and Matthew Pinson. And I used that as my mouse mat. I ripped it down out of their calendar. I've got to say I graffitied a little bit on it, wrote a few speech bubbles coming out of their mouths and drew a picture of us in front of them. And I worked my way through towards the Great Britain trials. And actually we won the Great Britain trials, and then we went on to the Olympic Games. And my brother and I got selected to do a boat called the coxed pair at the Olympics. Redgrave and Pinson were selected to do the coxless pair. They rowed on the Saturday and won a gold medal. We would row on the Sunday together, the two of us and a guy called Gary Herbert, who would sit in the boat and steer our boat. We'd been on a mission together. We'd shared our story with him. He'd been part of it. But it was only the night before the race that we shifted into the last gear. And as we shifted into the last gear, we sat and we talked about this moment in time and what this moment meant to us. And we said this was our chance to go and do something we would never get to do in our lives again. And the words around it that we said was, if not now, when? If not you, who? And we would go out and take this moment, and we were going to be the ones who would go, and we would go and win the gold medal. So I want to show you briefly what happened in the closing stages of that race. Okay, so that was my experience working in a silo, working on my own as a small team. This worked 20 years ago. It wasn't going to work in London 2012. But I didn't realize that in 1996. Because the truth is, although I'd spent my time competing against Steve Redgrave and against Matthew Pinsent, trying to be the best team in Britain, Steve Redgrave was the first guy to meet me when I came in with my gold medal from that race. That big hug that you saw him give people this year on the landing stage, he gave me that big hug in 1992 because I think he was already thinking bigger team. He was already thinking about the rowing team being successful, maybe even about Team GB being successful. But I wasn't part of that at that time. So in 1996, I went to the Olympic Games in a 4. And despite the fact I was rowing with two guys who I got on with pretty well, in the whole time I was with them, I never really understood them, and they never really understood me. So if I tell you in 4 years of rowing together, on all of our trips, I never shared a room with Tim Foster or with Rupert Opholzer. I only ever shared a room with my brother. When we went out and trained, I rowed with my brother, Tim rowed with Obbie. Right through to race day, when it really came to it, and we talked about how we were going to race, they had a good start and we had a good finish. And we hoped these things would come together, and that would be enough. We didn't talk about what really mattered. We didn't talk about what was the heart of it, about what we really brought, what we were really afraid of, what it would really mean to us to win. So we ended up with a bronze medal in an incredibly close race where that small difference in our behaviour would have made an enormous difference in terms of our outcome. Move on to the Sydney Olympic Games. In the Sydney Olympic Games, Steve Redgrave was doing a 4. I was racing in a single. My brother had stopped rowing as he was. I was invited to come to row with Steve Redgrave and with the group he was in. I was invited to row in the pair and train with Jürgen Grobler, who was the head coach of the team. But the way I saw him as a leader was that he didn't engage me. As far as I was concerned, he was wanting to coach Steve Redgrave to win a gold medal, and I was another person who was there. So when he sent out messages, I didn't listen and I didn't buy in. So for example, when he said, let's go training in Austria, I would say that's quite a good idea, but actually Italy's a lot warmer at this time of the year, and me and my brother train in Italy. And when he'd say, let's use the blue and white boat, I'd say, yeah, but I'd like to use the yellow boat because we can afford the yellow boat now. I think that would make us faster. So all the way along the lines, I personally was undermining what was going on within the team. Even though he was trying to join it up, he wasn't joining it up as well as I needed him to, but I wasn't signing up to it. And there was nothing at a higher level for me to buy into. So I went along the way, undermining my opportunity, until I ended up at the Sydney Olympics in that photograph, finishing in 4th place. And just to give you an example of what it's like to finish in 4th place, I was probably the distance I am from here to that table off winning the gold medal. I was about this distance off the silver and about this distance off the bronze. What that actually means is that I have nothing from there. I also get the chance to think about it on the aeroplane journey home, that as you fly home from the Sydney Olympics, if you have a medal, you get on the aeroplane and turn left. If you don't, you get on the aeroplane and turn right. So I had 24 hours to think about the difference that would have made. Whilst I was looking at it, whilst I was thinking about what had happened, I read about the French pair. I read about the French pair who had won the gold medal. What had they done which had meant they'd been able to come through and overtake us in the middle of the race? At that tough part of the race, in that 3rd quarter, when it was really hurting, Ed, who I was rowing with, had made a call. The call he made was, pull harder now. And we tried to pull hard and we tried to accelerate our boat. as I read this article, I learned how the French had overtaken us. At that point of the race, the bowman had called to the stroke man, he was godparents to his children. He'd said, for our children, and he called the names of their children, push harder now. They came through and they went on and won the gold medal. That for me is about communication. That for me is about understanding each other, and something that I didn't know at that time. Now, I do understand it now. And this is a framework which I've worked with for 16 years now, and worked with organizations about trying to get people to tell a story which is engaging. Notice how as you move up the levels of this little framework, the conversation becomes more engaging. So Dominic asked us at the beginning of the day to have a conversation in pairs at our tables. Notice how far we were prepared to go. Because Dominic was here to encourage us, we went beyond, how was your journey? It was fine. That gets us to the ritual. My journey actually involved me driving because I came here earlier. That would be the fact. In my opinion, I probably shouldn't really be driving to London. It's not good for the environment. And actually, I believe that we should be cutting down on our use of fossil fuels and improving the environment we live in. Because you know what? I've got a young family, and I do feel concerned about what the world's going to be like in 2040 when my daughter is my age and I'm my father's age. What kind of world are they going to inhabit? That tells you something about my emotion. That connects you. Hopefully that connects you to me. Now let's take this on to think about, what does this mean around London? So for the London Olympics, I had my own generation. But when Seb Coe went out there to Singapore and we put together our bid, we wanted to inspire a generation. France went out there to build some great infrastructure. We won the Olympic Games. We won the right to host it because we engage people emotionally. As a leader, as a communicator, he got the people that mattered to care about this thing. And you know what? It did enough to make me care about it. This vision of inspiring a generation was what made me think, in 2009, I want to be part of Team GB. I want to compete at the Olympic Games. Then you work down through the levels, like Adrian spoke about earlier. We want to inspire a generation. We want to host an awesome Olympic Games. And you know what? As a team, we want to be our greatest team. 600 athletes, 60 million strong. What does it then feel like within the sport of rowing? Jürgen Grobler is still the head coach of British rowing. So I had to come to Jürgen and say, I want to be part of Team GB. I want to be part of the Great Britain rowing team again. But he stood before me now, and he didn't say, I'm here to coach Steve Redgrave. He said, I want our 6 boats to win 6 medals. Then suddenly I felt engaged with that. Then we had a team that supported us, the biomechanists, the physiologists, the doctors, and they worked not just with us as rowers, they worked in Bisham Abbey, they worked across sports. So each day when I came in to do my weight training, the weight training coach would work with us, and then he'd work with the canoe team, then he'd work with the hockey team. And then I would see those people and start to have a conversation with them. You know what? Then I'd start to follow them on Twitter. And Twitter is a great way to get to that bottom level of communication. And once I'd sent them a message of good luck, or they'd sent me a well done, then I could move to the next level when I came to have a conversation with them in the dining room, or in the weight room, or in the queue to use the physio. Then we started to feel like one team of 600 athletes. Not me and my brother just in our pair, not just me and 50 rowers going to the Olympics. No, I started to feel like one of a team of 600. And that's where we started to get the confidence off each other. I then got selected to be in the 8. So I was in the 8 in 2010. I now know the levels of communication model. I know how to shift the dynamic within a team when I'm in it. So I remember we talked the night before the race of the World Championship final in 2010, and we sat together, and our coach asked us a fantastic question as we sat the night before. We'd been through all the logistics. We knew what time we were going to get up. We knew what we were going to eat for breakfast. We knew what we were going to do tactically within the race. But he asked us a question which just said, why are you here? Why are you here was such a fantastic question. We sat around the table and a couple of people answered it, and they started to share what was important to them. I like rowing. I like winning. I'm not very good at other sports. This could be my chance. But it hadn't quite shifted. So it came to me, and I said, well, you know what? I'm about 38 at that time. The rest of the crew average was about 25. I said, you know what? I'm going to lie on my deathbed before the rest of you do. And when I do, I want my kids to be proud of the life I've lived. And my life is going to be defined by what I've done. And tomorrow is an opportunity for us to do something amazing, to go out, race at the World Championships, be world champions. Well, I can tell you, the room changed slightly. It wasn't the sort of conversation we normally had as a team. But then suddenly, someone piped up about why they did rowing, because they'd been a swimmer, but they'd been bullied when they were a swimmer. Their coach had had a go at them. The coach said they'd never make it. So that person had got out of swimming and come to the sport of rowing. Some other people piped up about loved ones, people who they'd lost, why it was important to them that they wanted to do this thing and go and do it well. And we took ourselves to a totally different level. We went out and we raced the Germans. The Germans were the best 8 Germans that there were. We were the weakest 8 British that there are. In the first minute of the race, the Germans took half a boat length on us. We spent the next 5 minutes rowing that half a boat length back to a few feet, but we couldn't quite get through. But we won a silver medal at the World Championships. We raced again in 2011. The same thing happens. The Germans got out and stole a lead on us. We tried to come back, but we couldn't get through. So let's move it on to the Olympic Games. I got selected for the Olympic Games in April of 2012. In this photograph, I'm wearing exactly the same Stella McCartney tracksuit as all the rest of the Great Britain team. I know it's the same tracksuit because I was only allowed to have it for a day because we had to share them around the whole team. Because at this stage, it had only just come out from being under wraps, and we didn't have enough. So it was fantastic. One team. When I arrived at my Olympic village, Eton Dorney, I walked into my room, and that's the way my bedroom was dressed, the same as everyone else was tweeting their pictures from Stratford of how their bed was dressed. Fleecy blanket, a couple of water bottles sterilised from the machine, Pride the lion I'm holding, all of those things. We all had the same experience. No one was more special than anyone else. And we all went to the same presentation from Sir Clive Woodward. As we arrived at the Olympic venue, he gave us the same presentation. We agreed on how we would dress. This is a white day, red, white or blue. What colour t-shirts do you wear for your training? What colour t-shirts do you wear when you go and eat your lunch? We dress the same because we are part of one team. We don't wear our own sponsors, we're part of one team. In this picture, he's presenting with me with my dog tags, 166/542. That's my unique number out of the athletes who were selected for the Olympic Games. And he handed over each of them to each of us, so we felt like we were part of one team. So then, when I went to the dining room, and I walked into the dining room, I turned right and I sat in the blue seats by the best of British dining area. And I would sit down and talk to a hockey player, a boxer, a canoeist. And we would talk about what it was like to experience the home crowd, what it was like when your picture appeared on the big screen and that roar went up. So we shared those things and learned from each other because there was an organisation around us that let us feel like one team. And all our team managers worked together because they'd gone away and learned together. They'd established the values for our team together. And those things were written on the walls. They were written in the performance centre where we went each day. All across the team, we were joined up in every way that you can join up the communication. And so it came to race time. This one is a little bit of home advantage. This was how we got to and from the rowing venue. The rest of the team the rest of the country stayed at Royal Holloway College on the edge of London, drove around the M4, or around the M25, down the M4 and through some country lanes into Eton Dorney. We stayed in Windsor and we chugged along the River Thames for 10 minutes. And then we came into the venue. And as we did, everyone was engaged with the Olympics. As we walked in, we had those volunteers with the loud hailers shouting at us, shouting us encouragement as we came in. We had all of the support, all of the British public dressed like us as we came into the venue. And that felt special for us that they were there. I hope it felt special for them that we were walking past them and they were slapping us on our backs for 200 metres as we walked into the venue. So we prepared to race. And as we prepared to race, sorry, that's Australia. As we prepared to race, we talked about what would happen in this race. And we were going to do something different to what had happened before. The script had always been the same. The script was the Germans went out and led, we tried to catch up gloriously, and we ended up with a silver medal. So we said, on this one day, there are going to be 30,000 people on the bank. We are going to go as hard as we can to 1,500, and we are going to get ourselves in front. And then when we get to that last 500 meters, the Germans will be in a position they've never been in because they're behind, and we're going to be in a position we've never been in because there's 30,000 people screaming for us. And that's going to make the difference, which is going to make us win. So I'll show you what happened. We're going to jump in and out of this race. So I want you to think about the communication role of the cox. So he's the guy who sits in the boat, and he steers the boat, but all the time he's looking to get the best out of us. So at this stage, he's giving us the information. 45 seconds in, we're in second. I'm actually a bit gutted. I've pulled as hard as I can, and I thought we should be in first. But now we need to push the accelerator. Now we need to move away and get in front of the Germans. So he starts to remind us about the work we've done. He starts to tell us about the weights we've lifted, the hours we've spent on the rowing machine. This starts to move up the levels. This starts to get us to go faster. And we move in the second 500 out with the Germans. We're nearly level with the Germans. Then he knows how to get the best out of me. He knows what I need to hear. And he calls for me the name of my kids. And for Alex and the 3 guys who got silver medals in Beijing, he tells them this is their chance for them to turn that silver into a gold medal. For Stan, who rose at Eton, this is where he wins. This is where he goes and he delivers. And this is what happens to us in the third quarter. Now, I'd love to say that was the finish line. And you know our race plan. So you know that we're in a little bit of trouble here. But you know what? We've got a plan, and we've gone out and we've nailed ourselves to our plan. And we need to be able to look each other in the eye and say we did it as well as we could. So there's a few things here which are outside of our control. Clearly the Germans are outside of our control. If you look at that photograph, you might see those flags. You might notice we're rowing into quite a strong wind. This race, which took us 5 minutes 20 in the heat, is about to take us 5 minutes 51. So we've got 30 seconds of extra rowing to do here, compared to what we had prepared for and what we trained for, and you know our race plan. So what I'm going to do here is just leap you on, show you the closing stages where the 30,000 did their job, and this video lasts about 30 seconds. If it's okay with you, we won't watch the celebrations from this one. I still smile when I see it, and I smile because I'm incredibly proud that we raced the way we did, and we came away with a medal, because I know the difference of not coming away with a medal, and it's so, so much better to have one. And you know what? We nailed ourselves, and it hurt. But stuff which is worthwhile is going to hurt. It's going to be difficult, and we committed to that at the very outset. I committed to that at the very outset. But if it's not going to hurt, then it's not going to be worthwhile going after it. So, you know, we learned some lessons, and we were able to talk about it, and we were able to share what it meant to each of us. And I was so proud of one of the guys in the crew there who spoke at our rowing club dinner, and he spoke at the team dinner, and he said, when you took this photograph of him at the medal ceremony, he could have taken that medal and dropped it in the water. But now, 6 months on, he feels like it's his most prized possession in the world, because it was so special to be part of the London Olympics and to be out there and be competing. And you know what? I feel like I did my bit and I did it right. I did it honestly, I did it by the rules. This is half of a doping test. This is the half I could show you a photograph of. The other half is more inappropriate. Incidentally, that gets frozen for 20 years, so at any stage that could be taken out if medical science moves on. The people closest to me were proud of what I'd done. And then we started to get involved in the event in Hyde Park in BT London Live. And this thing was working. The whole of the British public were loving it. And our whole team was performing. And we went out, and as a team, we won 29 gold medals. So to be there at that closing ceremony, and to hear Seb Coe say those words, that when our time came, we did it right, felt like fantastic completion. And for me to realize, because I felt part of the whole organisation, and Team GB, and the rowing team, and me and my 8, I might not win every time, but we won, and we won together, and that felt fantastic to be part of. That concludes what I've got to say. Thanks very much.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Greg. I never tire of hearing that story, actually. I mean, Greg didn't mention, but some of you will be aware that the commentator losing his voice in the race in 2012 was the Cox in 1992, Gary Herbert. So whilst Greg had put himself back on the line to get in the boat, Gary was now a TV commentator on rowing, so was commentating on his old teammate, which is quite interesting. I mean, being a commentator myself, I went to commentate on the swimming. It was a phenomenal experience, and one that I was proud to be part of. Just a reflection also, when I was listening to Greg then talking, he was telling a story. So he's just a storytelling piece. He talked about something that was inspirational and visionary. He talked about outcome goals, the performance measures, and positions he would finish and the way he would, and then the process goals of being part of, creating that sort of the rowing success, if you like. So I think it was a complete journey through his story, which connects us to what he did, but why he did it, the meaning. I think the meaningfulness came out very strong and loud for me.